I've audited over 500 different systems between coaching, consulting, and agency-based businesses, and the majority of them had systems that looked good on paper, but they just didn't perform in practice. In this video, I'm going to show you the main mistakes that businesses make when it comes to setting up systems and why the majority of them spend time setting them up, but they don't equate to building them more revenue or saving them any time. I'm Giorgio Farrell, and I've literally spent the last decade since I dropped out of school at 17 helping coaches, consultants, and agency owners set up simple systems that save them time and help them earn more money. And what we're going to do today is break down why your current systems aren't working and what you can do to fix them so you can build a business that grows without you being the bottleneck. Now, the fatal flaw number one that most businesses fall into is that they try to build everything for perfection. Most businesses build systems like they're building a Swiss watch. Everything planned out, everything built perfectly, but in reality, it doesn't end up like that. Instead of starting off planning out a 47-page SOP document of exactly how the system is going to work that you're going to try and give to your staff members to get them to follow, start with a simple system. The best systems that I've ever created and I've seen perform in different businesses start off incredibly simple, and then they just evolve. That's the thing with business. A lot of the time we'll go into something thinking that we need to plan every single option and every single contingency, when in reality, we don't need to plan every single contingency. We need to see how it performs in the business, and we need to let data allow us to evolve. For example, if we can see that when we start running an ad campaign, the biggest bottleneck that we have is actually closing leads, well, we then need to build systems and adapt the systems that we have to solve that. We don't need to spend loads of time building systems to generate more leads if we've already got enough leads. So the biggest thing is don't build for perfection, build for simplicity, and build with the lowest amount of steps possible. The simpler something is, the less steps that it has, the more scalable that it is, and the easier that it is for you to explain to a staff member down the line and offload that from your plate. The minute that something is 47 steps long, numerous different branches, numerous different steps, it creates complexity, and it's very hard to then show someone how that works. Now, the second fatal flaw is building them ignoring human behavior. I think in business, a lot of the time we have these idealistic concepts where we think that everyone is going to do everything exactly to plan. Us as business owners, we sometimes get busy and things from our schedule, they drop off. Staff members sometimes get overwhelmed and don't do things to the level that they should. And if we assume in business that everything is going to always happen to plan, well, we're probably not going to build a successful business because nothing ever works out like that. So when we're building automations, we don't want to have steps where a human has to jump in and do this thing. Instead, we just want a system that runs autonomously without us doing anything, because in my opinion, the whole goal of automations is to automate a task, take it off your plate so you can forget about it. In business, as a business owner, we have enough things in our head that is overwhelming, it consumes us, and it creates anxiety when we see this task list build up and up and up. When in reality, if we want to automate a task, we want to set up a simple system that's set up once, we test it, and then we never think about it again. Just like if you hired a staff member, you paid them once and they just worked for you for the rest of their life without you ever needing to talk to them. That's the whole goal of automations. We set it up once, it runs, we forget about it, and there's things happening in my business right now that I couldn't remember because I set them up 4 years ago, but I just know that it happens and it's removed from my mind. Now, the third fatal flaw is that there's no feedback loop. Now, I'm all for setting up a system once and forgetting about it. But the whole point of business is that we evolve. If we look at the most successful companies, they've not done one thing to get successful, forgotten about it, and then just tried a different thing. They've done one thing to get successful, they've analyzed what works and what doesn't, and then they've pivoted to the points that are working most, and they literally just keep iterating like that and improving based off what the data's saying. And I think in business, we're always taught that let the data dictate our decisions, but a lot of people don't actually contextualize what that means in practice. And that means that we literally look at the data and see what it's telling us. For example, if we're running an ad campaign but we're not making sales, that doesn't always mean that the problem is the ads. It might mean that our problem is what happens after the lead opts in. What happens when the lead gets on a sales call with us? There's so many steps to that, and that's why we need to be really clear on our data, because otherwise our business will stall, and the bigger that your business gets, every decision that you make has a bigger impact. That impact can be for the good or it can be for the bad. If we're scaling an ad campaign and we're spending hundreds, thousands a day, and we make small decisions, if that's accurate and based off data, that's gonna make us a lot more money. But if we make the wrong decision, that can literally burn an ad campaign and pivot our business in the wrong direction. I've seen business owners who are making multiple six figures a year have wrong data. They make decisions based off that data, completely change their niche and pivot in a completely different direction. And as a result, their business then suffers even more. When in reality, we need to be very, very clear on our data, ensure that our data is accurate, and then we pivot based off that. And this is where it's so important having a feedback loop as to, is the automation working? If it is, great. What can we then do to improve that? And it's that game of iterating based off data. And our whole goal with automations and AI and systems is to allow you to work less, but to also allow you to move into a position where you assess the data. Because I think a lot of the time people think, let me just put automations in my business and I'll do nothing. The goal is you don't do nothing, you assess the data and you can then keep iterating and refining it so then your business grows with you doing significantly less work. Now I have what I call the system stress test framework, which I follow every single time that I'm looking to launch a new system in my business. Now there's 4 steps to the system stress test framework that I'm going to walk you through, and I want you to remember this and use this next time you're looking at launching new systems in your business. Now, the first one is the stupid test. Could someone follow this system if they literally weren't thinking? Could you hire a new staff member that isn't really qualified, doesn't have experience, and could you say, follow this process? And would they be able to follow this without you having to articulate everything to them? If they could, you've passed the stupid test, and it means that the simpler your systems are, the easier it is for people to use, and the less that you're going to have to get involved, and the less changes you're going to have to make, and the less things there are that could go wrong. Now, the next one is what I call the busy test. In business, when we get busy, we get stressed, we get anxious. Is this a system that someone could use? I think a lot of the time we have automations and systems in business that are set up that run very smoothly and we can lean on them when we get busy. But on the flip side, some business owners, they set up systems that are a little bit clunky, which then means that when we get busy, we don't use them, we just default to doing manually. If you have to default to doing something manually because you feel like it's less stress and it's quicker when you're busy, you've not passed the busy test, and it means that that system isn't ready to launch yet and it needs refining. Now, thirdly, we have what's called the break test. With everything, we need a backup plan. What happens if someone's sick? That's why we need these systems to run fully autonomously, because then it's not reliant on a human being. Second to that, what happens if that software goes down? Do we have a backup plan in order to make sure that that workload still happens, or at least a way of us knowing that there's an issue so that then we make sure that things aren't lost? For example, if we have an onboarding sequence or we have a notification system and follow-up system when clients' payments fail, we don't want that just to not happen one day. We want to know that it hasn't happened and be able to put a backup plan in place. Otherwise, we're losing revenue and ultimately we're onboarding clients that are paying lots of money, but they're not getting anything in return. Now, the last step to this framework is the scale test. Would this system work if you put 10 times the volume through it? If it would, and you've ticked off all these 3 prior steps and the scale test, then you now have a system that's ready to launch. However, if it doesn't pass one of these tests, you need to revisit that and figure out why. A lot of the time it comes down to simplifying the system first, then running it back through the framework, and then you'll be in a position where you can actually launch it. So you're probably thinking, all of this information sounds great. How on earth do I implement it in your business? So let me show you exactly what the next steps are and how you can start systemizing your business too. Now, the first step is to pick one part of your business that's a big frustration or a big bottleneck. The bigger the frustration, the bigger the bottleneck, pick that first, because we want to solve the biggest problems first. We've now found what that frustration and bottleneck is. We want to then run it through the stress test system. If we run it through this system and what we already have in place works, great, we've got a system for it. We can then look at the data and we can then improve it even more. But we then want to see if there's any failure points through the stress test framework And if there are, we want to put something in place to fix it. We want to put that in place to fix it, and then we want to leave it for a period of time. Now, this period of time purely depends on how much volume you have going through it. If you don't have much volume going through it, then you're probably going to have to wait a longer period of time to get sufficient data to know if it's working or not. If you have a lot of data going through it, then you probably don't need to wait that long to see if it's working or not. And then based off that, we can keep optimizing and improving. So I want to leave you with one final thought for this video, that remember that the simple systems are the best ones because simplicity scales, complexity doesn't. And a lot of the time, the systems that work are better than the systems that are perfect, because a lot of the time we want to keep optimizing based off the direction that your business is in. We can't optimize for your business making double the revenue that it is right now because you're not trying to solve those problems yet. You're trying to solve the problems that you have right now. And if you found this video useful, make sure to drop me a subscribe, as I post every single week showing you the simple steps that you can take to scale your business whilst working less.